Welcome to BS&BEER Canada. My name is Aaron Jones. I'm a carpenter and a builder on Grand Manan Island in New Brunswick, Canada. And my closest neighbor and fellow building science geek blower door nut is, wrong way, right over there, Lori Rand.
I don't know what you're pointing at. I thought you were pointing at the map. I'm just there. See, maybe you can tell by that really
Uh,
incredibly detailed map, Tina, that
no,
you
It's not in here. It's in the basement in the house. It's not
um
in here.
so I'm Lori Rand and I am in Halifax. I am, as
Huh?
Aaron accused me, a building science geek. I own an
We're gonna
architecture
go
firm
up
here
now.
in Halifax. We've
Up
got
now.
some
I'm closing this up now.
we've got some sound here. Um, and we've got a small BS&BEER crew here today. I don't see any of our West Coast colleagues today. But we do have our foreign correspondent, it's true. Mark Willie is in the house. I don't know if he wants to say hi, although he seems to have disappeared. Anyway, and before I hand it over, hi, Mark. I'm drinking an exciting cup of tea, decaffeinated. So, uh,
I like the decaffeinated tea, Lori, and I gotta say, can't be more excited when you give a tour on the place there. And I'm visiting the most south of everyone. If anyone is further south than San Antonio, Texas, then you should probably turn around and head back north. And as Aaron always reminds me, if you hit the nickel, you're going the wrong way. So my name is Mark Willey. I'm your foreign correspondent, and I'm ready to kick things off. And remember to put your questions in the chat because without questions, we're not listening. Without listening, we're not learning.
Thank you, Mark. Before I introduce our guest, I should mention I am drinking a Trailway fetch in big dog fashion. But more important than that, we have some exciting news. Something we've been keeping under wraps for the most part. But May 21st in Colquitman, BC, we will be having a building science symposium master's class, one day only, breakfast, lunch, and beer included. We have some amazing speakers lined up. We're going to have Jake Bruton, Mark Bernhardt, Brian Euler. Um, I'm not going to get into the sponsors. Registration will be open next week. It will be up on our website. It will be on social. There will be all kinds of places to find out where to register. But I'm hope if you're listening or you have a friend out in BC or you can make the trip, give us a call. Let us know where you're coming, and we'll make sure that there's a spot for you. And our guest, one of our own, Pete, the founder of BS&BEER Southern Ontario. Welcome to the show, Pete.
Oh, hello, hello. I got to unmute myself. I'm just sitting back enjoying the show, and that's usually how I'm watching it. Like Aaron said, I'm an interior designer out of Southern Ontario. If you see me in the wild, I'm in Hamilton, Dundas usual area. I live in Caledonia, grew up in a small town, Grassy, Ontario. Shout out Grassy. I am drinking a Oranje Sun Brewing. How close do I have to put this so that you see it? It's always a trick. Oranje Sun, brewed in Caledonia. Um, this is, I've got this because I needed a little bit of the inspiration. Lovingly brewed by a mechanical HVAC contractor in town in Caledonia. And these are the leftovers from our on-site site visit for BS&BEER Southern Ontario last week. We stagger our meetings, if you didn't know, every second Thursday. So we never miss a BS&BEER Canada every third Thursday. I'd like to take a moment though, because I feel like it's important. I think we should probably cheers all the folks that make this happen all the time. I don't know if we realized, but I think the first show you did was 2 years ago next month.
This is actually the 24th show
For Canada?
for BS&BEER Canada, yes.
Oh boy, I gotta catch up.
Happy 2-year anniversary.
Aaron, Gina,
Amazing.
Connor, Sean,
Cheers
Lori,
to
Justin. Yes, absolutely. Thomas, Marcus. I know there's a lot of people probably in the background and people that sometimes get missed, but you're making it happen. You're keeping it exciting. I had the pleasure of meeting some of you at the symposium in Toronto. You are a great crew, and thank you for pushing it.
Thanks, Pete.
So my topic is to simplify BS. I was once told, you don't know a topic well enough if you can't explain it simply. And I find building science is a complicated topic. My background's interior design, but I've rubbed shoulders with quite a few architects, and now I work with an engineer. There are ways that we can explain it effectively, and we can explain it intelligently, especially to folks on site, folks that value like quality clothing, or how do you explain it to a client in a way that they understand? You start talking about thermal bridging, their eyes might gloss, right? So how do we let them understand it? If they understand it, then they're more likely to pay for the quality and the value that you have to offer, right? So I'm going to try and share a screen. I'm seeing myself right now. Do you guys see a screen right now? All right.
I can't see your screen yet, but
do you see a chart?
Not yet. Oh, something's happening, Pete. There we go. There we go.
We're into it.
I love this.
First slide of the night, and you're thinking, what the heck is this? I thought we were talking about building science. This is a show, I don't know if it's all over, but it seems like it's in cold climates all the time. Alaska, Canada. And ultimately, you end up being out in nature by yourself, and you pick a select amount of tools, and you essentially have to make shelter, survive, hunt, do your own thing. And what I find interesting is, I guess this is a chart of what items each of these folks have selected when they go, and the popular items that you pick. I think it's fascinating because I'll watch a show like this and I'm thinking to myself about building science. We all have tools available to us. We are picking which tools are maybe more effective or less effective. It's how you carry the tool, how often people say if I have one tool, it has two purposes. That's being efficient, right? And that's similar with picking your products, your envelopes, your lapping materials. It's a good thought to carry forward too. I caught one bit of the show, and it was funny what the one person mentioned. They said that they put on weight intentionally so that they would outstarve the other contestants. And as a trades person out there, or a engineer, or somebody who's a drafter, are you going to outstarve your competition, or are you going to lead it and maybe have those smart, intelligent tools, right? You draw that line, you own that company, right? And also I find the people pool varies. And I think construction's guilty of this. I think other industries are too, but regardless of race, creed, gender, any of that, put that aside, because if you have an entire team that you work with that are carbon copies of yourself, you just get the same idea, the same thoughts, you get nothing fresh. So expand your mind. I'm encouraging people, don't carbon copy. Get somebody on your team that has a different thought. Don't be afraid of it. All that from a show. Where does your project begin? So we do drafting, we do like load bearing wall removals, everything from like custom homes to simple little projects. But you get all sorts of clients, and I'm sure everybody on this panel is similar. Like, you may have a client that has already purchased a plan online. They think the project's already done. They spent their $200 and there's no more thought that needs to happen. They're not considering orientation on a site. They're not considering thermal boundaries. Think about that for your own team. Where does your project begin? Are you relying on someone else, or are you a leader, right? And that brings it back to sort of survival. It's shelter, resiliency, and comfort. There's on the right hand side, there's a few different programs that I've seen or been a part of indirectly, and I find it's interesting because some of these programs are leaning toward resiliency. Say the power goes out, will your house be able to stay relatively warm for a few days, right? That ultimately is what everybody wants. Everybody wants comfort and resiliency, regardless of what program it is. There is a lot of opportunity in that way. I also get a laugh out of this. This is an Amazon, I call it aluminum sheet. And on the side, it says, "Don't die," just as a fresh little reminder. But the photo on the bottom, he does not look like he's doing well. He did not make good choices. You should not have picked the tent. We're getting right into this. We're going fast now. I can't touch on everything, but I'm trying to keep it simple, right? So where credit's due, I added a few credits on the bottom. With our local chapter, I presented this, but I wanted to add a little bit of background info. This is a very simple concept. I remember seeing it early on. Essentially, it's comprised of three components. You've got cladding, insulation, and substrate. If you are dealing with a floor, slab, undergrade, roof, wall, they are ultimately very similar. Sometimes you can put the insulation on a different side. You can play with the assembly a little bit depending on what it's exposed to, but they have the same sort of components. So you should be thinking about those components, fundamental components, no matter what it's applied to. Every single job site has a coffee cup. This one in the middle, I don't know what brand, but I'm sure you can think of a brand locally that you have your branding on. But there are better coffee cups than others. If somebody hands you a steaming hot ceramic, you're going to feel that. That's a thermal bridge. You feel it. It's hot. When it's insulated and double walled like the one in the center, it's going to have that separation. It doesn't have insulation in this picture, but just the fact that it's separated and it's sealed and contained makes it a more resilient assembly. Some of the other products on the right, I mean, these are just examples. You've got other products, right? You've got just straight paper. You've got the ripple, which just barely helps. And then you've got that gross plastic perfect touch. There's different products out there, right? Different floppy bits, different things you can clad your building with. The Monopoly House, classic, horrendous game, horrendous. But what people say when what do people mean when they say Monopoly House? It's a simple structure. It's very clear. It's what your child would have drawn when you say draw a house. And if you can think of an envelope as simple as possible, even going back to this mug, like the weak point in this mug is that seam where the lid meets the sidewalls of this mug, right? If I were to tell you, okay, this mug represents your house and you have a high water table and you have to set that mug into the ground, are you going to put it upright or are you going to put it upside down, right? It depends on your risk on your site. You would put it like with the bottom down because you want the strongest component of it to push and fight away. The weakness is every time, I think Connor Malloy mentioned that in his last presentation, but every time your thermal envelope has a little jut or a little change, like it does in this case of this mug at the lid, that's your weak point. That's your susceptibility, right? If you're talking shelter, you might put it upside down because you've got the most resilient at the top, right? But our Monopoly House is like the simplest structure of this. And of course, we see thousands of these, right? Everybody builds these. It's more like you see different products. You see different assemblies. You maybe find that your client has consulted their friend who has a suggestion. Let's add a dormer. Let's add a porch. They have lots of building experience, of course, right? So it's obviously thought of in terms of orientation or glazing exposure. Let's add a garage. Let's put the garage underneath. Why not? We don't have that much lot size. And let's have a basement, full basement. Might as well make it a rec room. Let's spend some money. We're digging anyway, right? And a crawl space. Is it hot? Is it cold? I don't know. It's just a short basement. This is where it gets complicated. We started with a real simple envelope It's very clear. It's a red line test. If you're a contractor, maybe check out that drawing set that you just received. Try a red line test. If you're a client, ask your contractor, ask somebody that's bidding on a project, where are the risks on this envelope? Where are some efficiencies that you might offer? If you speak to that, if you add that little bit of information to somebody, whether you're pricing or whether you're looking at their job, you're adding tremendous value because you're understanding when something is inside or outside. And if you don't understand that, you get thermal bridging. You get that hot coffee mug. You get the picture on the left. This is a perfect example. That's the little dormer that they added, as per suggestion by their neighbor. And obviously there's some hot spots, right? There's some leakage happening, or maybe it's air conditioning, depending on where you are. I'm in climate zone 5, so likely hot spots unless it's in the summer, right? Now, their thermal imaging, I think, can be scary sometimes to folks. We offer thermal imaging at times. There will always be a weak point in the envelope. So when you point a thermal camera, it will always pick the weakest point. And often those are windows, for example. That's why people focus on triple pane or improving that thermal performance of that assembly, right? But don't get scared by it. It's there to offer some knowledge. It's there when you're doing like a site audit, you might be missing. It's so helpful because you might be missing something and not realizing that something wasn't insulated. And with the thermal camera image, you can see a lot. And certainly if you have specific times in construction that it makes sense, say you're re-roofing or you're recladding your house, these are great times. Think about it. You don't necessarily have to have a thermal camera, but it's worth the $300 if you have to pay somebody to have one. It depends, I guess. The price depends on where you are, but locally, I think our energy audits are $300 a pop. But what I do find is sometimes they're in and out so fast. It feels like you're bothering them. Ask the question. If you're truly interested, ask the question, or find a consultant who cares. Maybe there's somebody who has access to a thermal camera and is willing to show you and willing to help, but listen as well. Don't just look at the colorful pictures and think, I don't know. This slide I love. 2 reasons. If you get the opportunity, well, I will say this as a warning to forward people. If you don't have a headshot, a glamour headshot ready for a presentation such as this, Aaron or maybe Gina, I don't know who, but somebody will pick whatever photo is available, ideally with you wearing a flashing shirt day, like a red flashing shirt, and then just post it up there and just, you know what, let's roll with it. Also, I guess there's some people maybe feel a little bit nervous sharing their details, sharing their assemblies. And I have 100% confidence in showing this assembly because this is our Toronto, Ontario Chief Building Official minimum code detail of a wall section. I couldn't find one with a window, but I could find one that had a wall section. And on the left here, you've got the oldest, like hand drafted sketch that I could find with old assemblies. And this one has a window, which is phenomenal. What I find fascinating with this, and I mean, the house on the left, presumably over 100 years old. We're talking real wood. You can see the grain in the wood. We're talking old growth. Notice the sills are sloped. Notice if there is flashing, it's all lapped nicely. It's tying into the next layer. It's renovatable. You can replace a window. You can lap something back in. Someone once said that consider the next person on a job site, because if you do a good job, it's going to be you. So that is present certainly with these details. There's attention to detail. There's purpose. There's even some of the detailing at the top is pretty beautiful. Now on the right, this is minimum code, and we don't have the same old growth wood. We don't have the same, our studs are different. We're working with OSB at times, right? I would say that our risk is greater. We used to work with solid pieces, and now we're working with, at times, almost paper mache, depending on who's building it. If your risk is greater, then you need to be very, very thorough with the details. You need to nail it, and you need to make sure that you can lap in and make good connections so that you can replace things or adjust things. We deal occasionally with heritage, and one of the good important things to say with heritage is the home needs to be loved. If it's not loved and you can't maintain it, then they will not maintain it, and you will lose these beautiful homes. So make it, if you do renovate them, try and renovate them in an intelligent way where you love that home, or move on, give it to somebody else who loves it and has the elbow grease and is willing to do it. Don't try and cheap out, trying to do it well. There are plenty of people that love these homes, and we can do it together. There's many options, right? There's different ways of cost saving. It depends on your risk. If you've got a beautiful overlap porch, then the risk on those windows and some of those details a little less. So try and simplify and ask those contractors those questions, because there are folks out here that really know the details. I give some credit here to Unbuild It podcast for sure. I remember when I was working in an architectural firm, I found these layers, these assemblies, if you will, quite confusing. The terms are flipping back and forth, and yeah, I'll get to another point in a second. But I'm an avid motorcyclist, if anybody knows me well, and you add 80 kilometers an hour to whatever clothing you choose for the day, and you will know very quickly if it's effective or not. So I painstakingly spent a little bit of time finding the right pieces of clothing here, and they layered it nicely. The gentleman or gentlewoman on the left, this is pre-finished metal cladding. WRB, it's weather resistive barrier. If we can use that term on our drawings, it's nice and consistent. It doesn't have to be a name brand in that place. And both those components, that constitutes water management, down and out. Insulation's within it. If you have a good quality WRB on the outside, your insulation is going to be nice and toasty. It's going to do what it's supposed to do. If there's holes in it, you're going to get air movement. The air movement carries water vapor. It just blows through the wall. So you need to have a nice quality sandwich of WRB and air barrier on either side. That constitutes your building envelope. I like these terms. We try and use them in our drawings. We try and keep it simple, keep it the same. I'll flip to the next one, which gets sort of particular. I know code locally, we see a lot of people saying 6 mil poly, 6 mil poly. This is a map that came from the Fine Home Building, but essentially IRC. So Southern Ontario, my area is climate zone 5. But the transition right there, you've got the yellow, if you will, or the beige that kind of goes to light blue. Notice that there are different types of air barriers. We call it like the vapor barrier on occasion, but I don't think that that's necessarily right. And I understand there was maybe a class action lawsuit down in the States. They don't call it vapor barrier, they call it vapor retarder. Because barrier alludes to the fact that it absolutely blocks everything. Be careful, that's all. It's your risk factor. If you make a vapor sandwich, then you're caught in the middle where you might get some condensation. In our area, we're seeing a lot of rigid insulation on the outside. You have options with rigid insulation. You don't have to use some products that are more on the plastic or less open to dry, right? Because if you're putting plastic on the outside and you're putting plastic on the inside, you've got a vapor sandwich and your risk is higher, right? It needs to have the ability to dry. In our little local group, we have a bell. So essentially, if you say, well, the building needs to breathe, the next person that hits the bell, they have to buy them a beer. And that's our going joke. But it's got to be able to dry. So if you have a high risk assembly that you're trying to work out, think about it. Does it have the ability to dry? Also, is the water getting down and out? Are you sealing it in? Try and be careful with those details that you're not sealing something in. Don't just caulk all the openings, right? I'm thinking, so I mean, I have interior design background, I guess, and I will say, thinking back to our assemblies, we talk about the exterior assembly a lot, but there are finishes inside too. If you have a basement and you decide to put, vinyl composite tile or luxury vinyl tile, not all glues are compatible. If you don't have a barrier, a layer, a vapor layer underneath, you're going to get some moisture wicking that comes up in it, and it will kill that glue and it will pop tiles. Similar to, if you've been in an older home and somebody's got a mirror on an exterior wall, if it doesn't have little standoffs or something, you'll notice that it picks up on condensate. There's air movement. It's unbelievable. You pick up on things, you notice things in homes when you're in this industry, but it doesn't just stop at the assembly. It keeps going. We have other products, we have other finishes that go on top of this as well. They don't need to breathe. They need to be able to dry. What are your clients' expectations? And I don't mean to put them both on the couches. This might be us, actually. But we live in a world that is, we are armchair professionals out there. Everybody, I feel like the construction industry is bad for this too. We love to pick apart the details of other folks. You could see I disappeared there. I'm doing a vanishing act. We love to pick apart the details of other folks, and we need to support each other out there. People are exposed to a lot of different material, and they don't realize that there are climate zones. We're all sitting in front of these awesome maps, and there are colors on them, but there's a reason there's colors on them, because how you build in San Antonio is different than how you build in New Brunswick, right? So keep that in mind and bring that knowledge. Sometimes we forget to, almost like the BS&BEER meetings we introduce, and we'll maybe say if we're in a different climate zone, if it's a larger spectrum like this. But I find locally, we forget about it sometimes. Don't forget to mention it. And what does that mean for your assemblies? Why do you choose those assemblies? Why do you like them? Are they lower risk for a reason, right? Express that to your client. I think Jake Bruton from Unbuild It actually mentioned that he will post the question to his clients. He will ask what their goals are with the project. And then down the line, he can sort of arrange his plan for their home and their building according to their needs. So if their main concern is allergies, you could speak to the mechanical system or the quality of windows or the air tightness. If your concern is like fires, local fires, or if your concern is, but there's also other ones, like the old saying is like, we can do three things, right? Like fast, good, and cheap, and you can only pick two. I'm pushing the durable, comfortable, and healthy. You can pick all three. But it's a matter of that client. Are you going to pick the team that is offering those things, and why are they offering those things? If your client is saying they want it fast and cheap, maybe they're not the right fit, or good but also cheap. Maybe they're not the right fit. There are challenges with it, right? It's okay to have those conversations. Maybe their top priority is that it gets done quickly before their son gets married. We had a client that had that situation. So, can you do it? Can you deliver? And what are you offering to help them? And when you understand their needs, then you can align yourself with their needs and try and help them, guide them through, and pick your language according to the direction you're headed. I'm going to very lightly touch these topics for the next two, but it is worth mentioning. And this is more, I guess, to the drafters and the professionals that are drawing. Your decisions do matter. They definitely do. Lloyd Alter, I think all three of these quotes are his, but now emissions versus later emissions. You're selecting products, think of the long term. Are there options that are maybe local? Are there options that have less emission? Are there tiles that are coming from Italy and shipping over the oceans, or do we have products that maybe are a little closer? I know hard surfaces are tough, but there are options out there, And your dollar is your vote, and your vote is going to make a difference because it's going to make that company thrive, and that company now has time to get more customers and move on. When people speak about carbon, I think that can be confusing sometimes for a homeowner. But Lloyd said it's all the carbon involved with building until you step in the front door. And that kind of simplifies it massively, and I love it. Rather than embodied carbon, we should call it upfront carbon. It's the environmental costs that we are willing to live with to make the assemblies and to make the buildings we do. Consider the environment. So I don't need to have a woofy calculation on the exact difference between fiberglass and rock wool necessarily. Sometimes it's okay to think 1x or 2x. You'd be surprised. There are some products that are like 10 times worse from an environmental perspective. And if you realize it's not just 1 or 2, it's like 10 times, maybe just use it sparingly, or make sure you're intentional when you use it. It better be the best product, right? Because the risk is high. This is a local recycling facility just north of me. And according to their website, very proudly, they say process up to 800 tons of construction and demolition material daily. Daily. So construction material is an impact. And, you know, those are also the houses that are getting flipped. But keep that in mind. If your product is lapping nicely into another, then you don't have to tear everything off. You can lap the new finish in and get the new one attached. Check your language. This is timely. I'm going to skip right past this one as best I can, but check your language. Remove verbiage about less and sacrifice and prudence, because having a quality building is awesome. It's comfortable. It's durable. Those are, you got to start using words in your vocabulary that starts to boost up your industry and what you're doing, right? People are willing to pay for something when they understand. I've had a few times that you'll walk through with a client just briefly, and we were actually brought in with maybe somebody else, but you'll talk them through some of the details. And, you know, what are your concerns, and what were you thinking that you would do to resolve it? And you find that the project sometimes grows, and they're very willing to work with you, and they're very willing to pay more to do the job right. And it's okay to have that conversation. Maybe you can't offer the solution right away, but they will remember you because you had an insight that they never thought of, and you explained it in a simple way. And that is so valuable that when their father is asking for a project coming down the line, then you will be the contact, right? Besides the fact that the Tesla truck sort of looks like a Monopoly house, I have nothing to say about it besides his wonderful parking. And there's a lot of talk about electrification. I completely understand. I think in the tool industry, there's a CAS system that Europe is trying to push, where they have a similar battery pack for all of the tools. This is very cool. This is very awesome. I like the idea of working nicely together. Similar to like plugging in your car. I like the idea of having a universal plug that we can all plug into. I like it when it increases the resiliency of your house, not just because there's a rebate. Some people don't know, but like you can buy chargers, should you have an electric vehicle, that go both ways. So instead of a generator, you can plug your vehicle in, and you're not going to be driving to work, but you can backfeed into your house instead of a generator, which is very cool. And you're increasing the resiliency. You don't need to deal with the gas. You don't need to purchase a power wall. I forget what the price is of the power wall, but it's pretty substantial. I like to hear when something's resilient and when something is purposeful. And also don't drive your work truck that you currently have, that you already have the upfront embodied carbon in shame. Don't do that, because you've already committed to something and you are driving it until it has served its purpose. And perhaps if you are in town or you have small commutes, then maybe the next one might be electric, but I'm not one to necessarily push that it has to be. Everybody has their choice. This is a phenomenal pyramid. Martin Holliday, Green Building Advisor. I love this one. really, I'm going to recap right after this, but there are clients, but there are consultants, all sorts of folks on a different tier of this pyramid. There's nothing wrong with any tier of this pyramid. Anything you do to your house increases your resiliency and your comfort. Um, and it also makes somebody feel like they can do something about it, no matter where they are at, where their budget is at. And this is a great pyramid to share with folks that don't quite understand, but they're willing to make a difference. You approach their house. I remember I had one this past winter. We came up to the house for a site audit, and I just look up at the house and I can tell that the snow is perfectly melted at the lights that they left in their soffit. They don't know. They walk up to their house every day and they don't know. You can help them with just tiny little suggestions, right? The picture on the left has got a lot going on, a lot of very cool options, some of which we were able to show at our little construction get together last Thursday. But double walls, when you've got like open web, if you will, like truss joists, very, very cool. Your electrician's going to love you because they can just feed the wire. There's no drilling, there's no slowing down. Their price should come down. Noted. But you're reducing thermal bridging. There is a lot of cool little details in this picture, even the insulation on that slab along the wall, and then it goes up and in. Very cool basement little details. There are simple options that are available if we as a consultants understand what your needs are and where your comfort is. Essentially, this is a recap slide, but I think it sort of captures the same. And I also have that beautiful furry hat up there. But position yourself and your team for success. Be a leader, knowledgeable. You got to be the go-to. Be confident with yourself and your role in the process. What are you and your company's standards, your risk factors? What products are you comfortable with to reduce your risk? What's your building standard? Simplify. There were fantastic images. Justin Ott, Connor Malloy, you guys provided some great photos from that last presentation where you're applying things. So you've got the porch that's monopolied, and then you're applying the front porch. You're applying an overhang. It's a different approach. It's just a few sticks more, but there's far less thermal bridging, and the air movement isn't going to be going through. Even renovation. Somebody mentioned that to me the other day, and I didn't really think about it. If you double wall, and say you were to bring that air control in a little bit, your ability to renovate is incredible because you just rip the drywall off. You don't have to follow behind the folks doing the roto zip around the outlet boxes. You don't even have to worry because you're moving the layer. You're understanding the assembly. Make concepts relatable, simplify complicated shapes. That's a big one. I see a lot of roof lines and downspouts that aren't thought of, kicking out right over top of a sidewalk. Perfect time for snow and ice, especially with aging in place or an ADU, right? Brilliant. Try and put some thought into it. Try and draw it out early. You don't need to have complicated roof lines. You can try and simplify it. What are your clients' ideas of a successful project? Does that align with yours? And make it relatable. And that's all.
Thank you very much, Pete. And this is amazing. A friend of mine once said, "We are all experts where we build." And one of your last little comments, or on your slide there, is, you know, probably the correct way to explain this would be, if you don't simplify it and you don't understand what you're building or where you're building, uh, you need to ask for help. And it goes back to where you started the presentation, is sometimes we have a client who comes to us with a $250 internet plan and they think it's great. But maybe that particular design, that roof line, is going to be amazing in Arizona, but maybe not so much in BC or Nova Scotia or New Brunswick. Little things to think about. And that's where we come in. And that's why they hire an expert. We have to tell them what this is going to perform like in our environment. And maybe not even from the high performance perspective, but just from the simple, are we going to get water to go out and away? Are you going to have issues with water in your basement because of the location you've chosen to build on? All great important points. And yes, I will continue to drive my truck until it is no longer of value.
Classic, classic, classic. At least I, wasn't pontificating for too long before you pointed that out, Aaron. Yeah, I love that you brought that up. Actually, I drive a Hyundai electric vehicle, and we picked the one we picked because it's bi-directional. So if I wanted to, I could go outside and like make a smoothie with my car. I don't do that, but it's amazing. So thanks for showing that, because not everybody knows that that's like a scenario that is possible. And the reason that we did make choose that car was for resilience. It's really funny, the power hasn't really gone out for very like, I think it's been out for once for half an hour since we bought the car, so it's really, I haven't been able to like really put it to the test. But
So you were out making smoothies right away. It's like buying the
no.
snowblower, right? The snowblower. It's never going to snow now. Thank you.
That's right. No, I mean, it's sort of funny. I mean, Nova Scotia, the power could go out for 2 weeks, like after a bad storm. Not 2 weeks, I'm exaggerating, but like loads of people lose power for 5+ days when there's a really bad storm. But where I am, our grid is pretty stable. It's weird little pocket where it usually doesn't go out. But when we had Hurricane Fiona, is it like 3 years now, 2 years now? I had no power for 5 days. So that factored into like, okay, maybe when we buy the next car, it's going to do that. And that's what we did. Um, yeah, loved it. Anyway, pontificating about cars here and not about the amazing presentation. So thank you for
My
that. That was really great.
my daily driver is a 2009. Mark Willie's been in it.
Wow. Well, so this is, I mean, it's super funny because I've never owned a new car in my life, but when it was like, okay, it's time, I sort of felt like I had to, like, like I've literally always driven like a 10-ish-year-old car, but was like, it's time to put my money where my mouth is. I yak about the best buildings we can buy all the time. So that's where I am now. Probably will never buy another one. They last forever too.
Yeah, once you replace the battery, you're good to
Mhm.
go for what is it, 15 years, I think.
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't know.
know.
It doesn't matter. I've done a bit of research in it because I have looked at them. I've looked at an electric truck, and it makes sense
Mhm.
um, on the island as far as the electric
Wow.
truck side. New Brunswick's grid, unfortunately, is dirty, so you've got to balance that out. And until I can afford to put solar panels on my roof, I'm just gonna keep driving my 2009
Yeah,
because there's all that
yeah,
carbon is already, right there. And it's the greenest
totally.
thing I could do is keep driving what I got.
Carpool to your local BS show, right?
That's right.
There you go. Um, I don't know. I've been trying to keep up in the chat. I don't know if we have any questions, Pete, but it's that time of the show where
Lots of
we
chatter. I don't know if I haven't noticed any either. I was kind of keeping an eye out. I
yeah.
did notice that Sean snuck in. I don't know if he wants
I,
to pop
I I did sneak in, and so maybe
in.
Peter asked a question is what is your default wall assembly now?
Ooh,
Nice.
that is a good question. We have a couple that we like, but I will say that we right now are trying to nail down a very good contractor that's in alignment with our policies as a firm. So we are willing to make some adjustments. in terms of specific materials. There's a lot of good options out there, right? That's where we are sitting right now. We will accommodate. We've got standard in Ontario. We've got exterior insulation. There's a lot of polyiso. We try and stay away from it. The job site we were just at last Thursday had Rockwell outside. I love it. I'd love to see it, but I haven't, not that often, unfortunately. So we are looking to position ourselves with a team also that prioritizes that, and we can custom make those details to your needs, and we'll work together. That would be sheer pleasure.
And just to expand on that too is like in your market, is the city or municipality giving you allowables for having a thicker wall, or is it still, cladding and then you gotta reduce the interior space by, going high performance and ideally not kind of helping out your clients because you're getting a smaller building? Hey, maybe it's worth building smaller, but sorry, the question is are you being penalized for going with thicker walls?
Yes, right now we are. Like that's my understanding of it. They're outside of exterior walls is the way they read it, not foundation. It would be great if it was foundation. We are also finding the reception depends on the inspector. We've got a lot of good inspectors out here, but when there's a product that is maybe a smart vapor barrier, if you will, that you can't see quite through, a GC would have to organize their site inspections slightly different so that the inspector's more comfortable and try and educate them when they show up. Ian, that was last Thursday. He had some Sega products that he loves using, and he makes sure that he gives the time with that inspector to touch and feel the product, answer any questions. But Proclaim is a great product out there too, and you have to align your meetings in response to those products, right? I swung by Haldeman's building inspectors, and the senior building inspector knew Ian by name, which is fantastic. That's what I like to hear.
We do something similar when we're working with Sega Myrex as well for inspections. We let everybody know, hey, like we technically don't have to call for an inspection until we've got our vapor retarder on. But if you want to actually see the framing, you better come out now. And we work through that. But I did see Doug Horgan had a question. He wanted to know what all the cool northern kids are doing for cold climate basements. Maybe we can get Doug to hop on here. Are you there, Doug?
Yeah.
We can't hear you, Doug.
Sorry.
Classic.
How's everybody?
Everybody's well, Doug.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I was working with Pat Wellman from Minnesota, and I got to hear him talk about doing basements in Minnesota, and it's so complicated. And then I saw your illustration from the Toronto building officials that said to use plastic on the interior of fiberglass insulation. Are we doing that? Does it work?
It depends.
Okay. Good answer.
Sorry, took the words out of my mouth.
I think you have to drink to that. I believe that's
Yeah, we did.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you
Oh,
do.
wow.
Sorry, just water over here, but yes, host.
My coworkers joined the call here. Oh, yes. Guess he wants to sit on my lap. Anyway. Okay.
So I suppose I do see poly often. Sometimes our drawings will get rejected if we don't say poly or approved alternate. Depending on if we get the right team, right? I would be pushing a little more based on the comfort of the inspectors in the area. Basements or crawl spaces, like short basements, we love to see the insulation just above that slab. While like insulation, poly, concrete, and if you can lap it up on the perimeter wall a little bit before is great. You make a little ice cube tray, if you will, or a little bit of a pan to capture all that concrete, and then you can tie in whatever your insulation of choice is up the wall, go up the concrete walls or CMU or whatnot, and then stud your wall into that. We have a handful of projects that are ICF that we've been seeing. So it really depends on comfort. ICF is kind of neat because some of your framers can start slapping that stuff together and understanding it pretty good. And with some zip ties, you can stretch and pull and rebar. Neat. We've been involved with like a pool also that was all ICF. Very cool. Holds tremendous thermal capacities. Really neat. Really neat.
ICF is actually amazing for pools. We do a lot of for new construction. We do a lot of ICF. We push for particular. It's a product we use on a regular basis, Nudura, and we like their XR35 block, nominal R35. So you're kind of there already with your basement wall. As far as thermal comfort. For renovations, if it's existing concrete, we like to use some type of rigid insulation directly against the concrete, then a slight air gap, which also helps deal with the irregularities in the wall, and 2x4, some type of vapor open insulation in the cavity, and then bare minimum, a smart vapor retarder. I will not say that I have never used 6 mil poly because I've used a lot of 6 mil poly, but in the last, we'll say, almost decade, we avoid it at all costs. The only place where I'll say, okay, we've got to make some cuts is I will use it on the ceiling of a vented attic. If it's a budget friendly build, it's a vented attic. Got to put it on the ceiling. Probably doesn't really matter. But for basements, yeah, I try and avoid that. Let's let it dry to the interior if it has to.
I think that's important to think about. Like your foundation wall could always be like the vapor drive is always going to be coming from outside to in the basement. And I think the two things you need to bear in mind, especially if you have a building official who's insisting on seeing a vapor control membrane, you really should be using one that's permeable, like vapor permeable, like variably permeable rather, so that if any water gets in there, it's going to get out. And you also need to think about ventilation for the basement, because if you want the walls to dry, the ventilation is going to help clear that out.
And I should also mention, and I think it's important to note that a vapor retarder that has variable permeability, they open under different conditions depending on the product. And the climate zone you live in should influence the products you choose. Mm-hmm. If you live in 6 or 7, there's some smart vapor retarders that might open too soon or too late, depending on the conditions. And, talk to an expert, make smart choices. Mm-hmm. Dr. Joe once said, don't do dumb things. That's where we're at.
But I'm glad you said that about the foam on the concrete, because that's what we would normally do, especially in a retrofit. Sometimes I would just do even like, the thinnest, like polyiso, like, the stuff you put on a roof, and like foil faced, and then you tape that. It's dead easy. And then you put a stud wall in front of that, and you can kind of put whatever you want in it, as long as you've got some ventilation going on in your basement.
Usually by the time we get to that extent of a renovation, we're pushing to add at a bare minimum an HRV at a bare minimum. So
yeah, no, it always shocks me, like we always do, and then it surprises me when I get the question. So lately I've just been like, remember, we need to ventilate.
And you know what? If we put enough insulation on a building, we don't need any vapor control.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody has the budget for that, so
Mm.
I totally get that.
And the basement has to be the right kind. That was a great discussion then. Hey, I see there's another question in the chat
Oh,
now that I've
wow.
taken up 5 minutes.
Well, it's wonderful to see your smiling face, Doug. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. I, anyways, Jeremiah, I assume you're asking a question. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up here. Hop right
Yeah,
on.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. All good. More of just a comment. First of all, I just
Okay.
wanted to, Pete, that was a really good presentation. Thanks for putting that together. And I just kind of wanted to comment on the simplicity aspect of what you were talking about, and just mostly that the more that we can develop and simplify processes and assemblies to the point where they become very repeatable, the delta between what's being built to code and the sort of high performance aspects of a building enclosure in particular gets a lot closer to the point where we probably don't have to have as many conversations with clients regarding the nitty gritty details that they probably don't care about anyways. If we're getting to a point where we can develop a wall assembly or overall assembly that's um, reducing those complications to the point where it's not putting a major burden on the budget as it might if it was, being built by people who maybe weren't super familiar with it and it was taking a lot more time, or just, maybe using a palette of materials that wasn't totally necessary uh, to still achieve the same goal. But I think by developing those processes, we can really close that gap between sort of the code standard, which most people don't even really actually know what that is, but that's kind of what they're picturing when they're thinking of a new house, and to try and get past some of the um, conversation around enclosure, which a lot of people probably don't care about that much. If we can start dialing that back in, I think we bring that a lot closer together, and then homeowners don't have to, become a building nerd necessarily, and still get a really good enclosure or a really good project in the end.
I agree to a certain point, Jeremiah, but I think we also have to add the craftsmanship to the equation, because I can build you something, based on the current code that will meet code, um, but you're not necessarily going to be happy with it. And
Oh,
I think
100%.
that's important that you know, we add the fact that we're professionals. We're bringing you a quality product, not just because we know how, but also we care. And that's 90% of the battle is, we care. That's why we're all here is we
Oh,
care about the
absolutely.
industry. We care about building better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got to be a combination of well executed craftsmanship with those details, but also as a community developing simplified processes that can help sort of just tone some of the complexities that we're all learning back as much as we can.
Bless you, Mark.
I think that
Thanks,
speaks
guys.
back to what risk are you willing to take, or rather, what risks you're not willing to take based on the products you pick. Perhaps you could explain to a client, well, I like doing it this way, and here's why.
Yeah.
When you waterproof, there's some we've got in our market too. They'll like de-water, if you will, and then they'll run like dimple to the inside, etc. But if you if you're putting a new basement floor in, then why not lap it up a little bit before you even start, insulating those exterior walls? And also, we talk about like vapor direction and like ability to dry. Be intentional about the direction that you're drying. Like especially when you're using like rigid insulation, um, above grade. I don't think you necessarily, below grade, there's something to be said about it, but like above grade, you got more options, and more options that have the ability to dry, right? You're
You just
picking a
have to
direction when you're not thinking about it. Yeah.
understand your assembly, and not only what is the lowest permeable material in that assembly, but where is it located in that assembly. If the lowest perm rating material in the assembly is OSB of some sort at 3, and it's dead smack in the middle of the assembly, well, then yeah, you're good to go both ways. But if it's a 14-inch wall and the OSB is at the 10-inch mark from inside to outside, well, more of your drying potential is to the inside of the house. And understanding that is key to that. I agree. That's awesome. All right. We are actually officially into overtime, by the way. For those of you that are still with us, quick reminder, Building Science Symposium Masters Class, May 21st at the Tap Room in Coquitlam, BC. Registration details coming soon. Hopefully they'll be on our website the first of next week.
Mark would like to talk.
Oh, sorry, Mark.
I was adding that date in the chat session there, Gina. But I want to say it's always good to stop and acknowledge it's a very hard subject to reach people, and your personality, your cadence, the images, how you tell the story. If I didn't know construction, and if I didn't know I was surrounded by buildings full of disasters, I would still be interested and still pick up on everything you laid down. It was awesome. Uh, my favorite graphic that you used, the first one is a great starter. I hope everyone learns from that one. Never heard of the show, and I think the show is never going to do the amount of justice you did in lapping it into the world of building science. But yeah. The later graphic is my all-time favorite, and that's the one where you had the cladding, the WRB, the insulation, the air barrier, and the building envelope, with the outfits there. So tangible, so easy to learn, right? Creating that depiction, um, powerful, powerful. If you're gonna have a presentation for a 2-year anniversary, this is the one.
I'm not going to lie. When me and Pete went over these slides, was it a week ago, 2 weeks ago? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
No
He emailed
secrets.
me.
No secrets.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Anyways, Pete emailed me his presentation just to make sure like we were all on the same page, and like I got to that slide and I was like sold. Like he didn't even explain it to me, just the visual representation of what was going on. I was like bought and sold. Signing the check. Here we go. Sorry, Pete, you're not actually getting a check, by the way. But we do applaud you and thank you very much for being our 2-year guest and putting on an amazing presentation. Um, there are so many things that resonated with me personally. Uh, you would not believe. Someday over a beer, I will tell you my best motorcycle ride, and I will tell you my worst motorcycle ride, and they both involve weather. All right. If that is it, thank you very much for joining us again for another episode of BS&BEER Canada. And please join us again next month, the third Thursday every month. You'll find us here. And if you have a moment, come on out to BC, May 21st. We're having a master's class.